Today we've got a special Vision Line steamer in the lightbox, Lionel's brand new O-scale New York Central J1E Hudson, product SKU 2521340. We opted for the pacemaker version of the J1E. This Hudson represents one of the most iconic steam locomotives to ever run the rails. The New York Central's J-Class Hudsons weren't just another set of passenger engines, they were a defining moment in American steam design. The New York Central needed more muscle than its 462 Pacifics could deliver as trains grew heavier and timetables got tighter. Borrowing the superpower steam concepts proven on Lima's Berkshires, especially the larger fireboxes enabled by a four-wheel trailing truck, the railroad and Elko adapted those ideas into a new high-speed passenger machine. The result was the 464 Hudson, and eventually the roster grew to 205 J1 class Hudsons, including the refined J1E variants. These locomotives became synonymous with passenger trains, polished rails, and high-speed running through the Hudson Valley. Lionel packed this Vision Line release with the full set of Legacy and Vision Line features, and all the digital control options: Legacy, TMCC, conventional, Bluetooth, and 4-digit addressing with the new Base 3 setup. The lighting package on these models includes directional headlights, tender backup light, cab illumination, and bicolored classification lights you can toggle between green and white through your Legacy controller. The smoke unit is fan-driven, synchronized, and adjustable, giving the engine some real presence on the rails. Under the boiler, Lionel is using a maintenance-free can motor with a momentum flywheel, paired with Odyssey 2 speed control to keep everything smooth at crawl speeds, and stable at high passenger train velocity. The locomotive and tender communicate through a wireless tether, and the drawbar is a kinematic design, which keeps the spacing tight on curves for a more realistic appearance. I'll give Lionel credit where it's due. They finally went with a scale pilot on these Hudsons. The coupler retaining screw is installed from under the pilot. The pilot itself looks pretty sharp, and you can see the drop coupler pilot and step detail, hose detail, the coupler cut lever, flag stanchions, plating covering the pump detail, and the smoke box. Lionel is still using the ugly Phillips head screws in the hinges of the smoke box door, which is fairly disappointing considering this is their top shelf branding. The mount for the headlight is also oddly cut out in the smoke box door, and you can see the obvious seam line, which makes it look really toy-like. The mounting bracket should have been cleanly mounted to the front of the door. In this shot, you can see the stack detail, access hatch with dog detailing, swinging bell, builder's plates, piping, and other detail. There is a noticeable gap in the seam on the front of the access hatch section on the smoke box. Panning down, you can see the piping, pump, and cylinder detail. The mechanical lubricator on this model is very lazy. It looks like someone whittled out a chunk of plastic and put a screw in it. The J3A Hudson had a scale lubricator on it. That's a wild ball drop on a Vision Line level engine. And you can see the two Phillips screws in the side of the valve gear bracket. Again, scale hex head bolts would have looked much nicer. The wheels and rods are nicely finished with white walling on the drivers and fluting on the rods. My only gripe is that the center driver set should have flanged wheels. There's great piping, tank, and other fine detailing as the eye moves towards the firebox. The firebox is pretty nice, and you can see the plating, stay-bolt cap detailed toward the bottom, and the ash pan. The trailing truck is pretty sharp, and there is good detail in the truck side frames and around the pedestal area. You can see the brake and spring rigging detail, the journal box caps, and the heart rocker detailing. The cab has 3 openable vents and sports nice molded-on access door and rivet detailing. You can see the cab glass and fireman and engineer figures. You can also see the gaps in the cab sidewall and back wall, which adds to a toy-like feel. I also didn't care that Lionel painted the entire boiler backhead red. Even if the boiler jacketing and skirting were more red and flashy, the boiler backhead is generally not. The vast majority are black. The boiler itself has nice handrail, pipe, dome, and fine detailing. The swinging bell is a nice touch, and the whistle, safeties, and steam generator look good. Overall, there is room for improvement, but it's a locomotive that will look good pulling a freight train on the layout. Moving over to the tender, I was disappointed immediately as there is zero detailing around the coal bunker. It looks like Lionel reused the same tender used on the 1990 JLC J1E. If so, that's pretty lazy for a release being called Vision Line with an almost $1,900 price tag. The trucks on the tender do look good, and there is a good amount of molded-in detailing on the side frames. You can make out the journal box cap, the brake hangers and rigging, and the leaf spring detail. The rear of the tender hits all the detail staples, including the rear light, ladder, coupler cut lever, and handrail detailing. You can see the water fill hatch and the ladder to the coal bunker. Rounding out the model is a load of fine coal in the bunker. The light colors of the fantasy scheme may highlight some of the issues I've had with this model, but overall it was an okay model. At a price of $1,400, I'd say this would have been a better value. But at nearly $1,900, it's lacking too much detailing to put it in that kind of a price bracket. I hope Lionel continues working on scale detail improvements and retooling. I do prefer the J3A Hudson over the J1E, but this earlier Hudson will still look the part hauling a freight train over the rails. Let's get her over to the layout and test out its whistles and bells, and then put it through its paces with the train.
Switchlist says we've got 1 off and 3 on at the head end. Cleveland, this is locomotive 5340. Train's coming in. Am I clear? Over.
Copy that. All lined up and clear inbound. Dispatch
These Vision Line Hudsons have just arrived with our friends over at trainworld.com, and for anyone wanting to add a New York Central Hudson to their O-scale fleet, they're currently listed at $1,862. We hope you enjoyed this O-scale product review here on the Steam channel. Until next time, we'll catch you on the rails.
Thanks for tuning in for this video here on the Steam channel. We hope you enjoyed it. Why not climb aboard for another high-quality Steam video in beautiful Ultra HD by clicking on one of the previews to your right.